The doorbell rang 7 times before the numbness in Claire's finger made her stop. She pressed harder instead, the teeth of her house key biting through the leather of her glove into her palm. The pain kept her sharp, kept her from thinking about what she already knew. The door opened. The woman standing there wore a silk slip dress, the kind you slept in when you wanted to be seen. Dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. A small mole just above her collarbone. She looked at Claire the way you'd glance at junk mail.
Mild Irritation.
A whisper of superiority. Can I help you? Claire knew that face. She'd seen it in hundreds of photos on Julian's phone, buried in folders labeled work docs and receipts. College-era shots. Candid moments. The same face aging from 22 to 34 in a digital shrine her husband had been curating for a decade. Naomi Vance. The one who got away. The one Julian never stopped wanting. I'm looking for Julian. Claire's voice came out steadier than she'd expected. Naomi tilted her head, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. There's no Julian here. His car's downstairs. Is it? The smile stretched wider. You must be Claire. The previous owner's ex-wife. Asterisk previous owner. Ex-wife. Asterisk. The words landed like a door slamming in her face. Julian sold this place, Naomi said, leaning against a doorframe with the easy confidence of someone who'd been living there for months. We've been here together. For months now. Didn't you get the memo? She paused, dragging a fingertip along the frame. Oh, right. He mentioned you were overseas. Business trip. Somewhere with a lot of time zones. For months. Claire's hand dropped to her side. 11 countries. 47 client meetings. 3,000 flight hours. And 3 weeks into the trip, Julian had called to say he needed space to think. Said maybe they should take some time apart. She'd assumed he meant a few weeks at the company apartment downtown. She'd assumed time apart meant he'd miss her enough to remember why they got married in the first place. She hadn't assumed time apart meant Naomi Vance. She hadn't assumed space to think meant 4 months playing house with his college girlfriend while Claire crisscrossed time zones closing deals that kept their mortgage paid. He said you'd understand, Naomi added. Said things between you two had been dead for years. He just needed the right moment to make it official. She studied Claire's face, hunting for the reaction she wanted. You're taking this pretty well. Claire stared at the mole on Naomi's collarbone. Her mind was already running the numbers. Julian owned 4 properties. This one, the downtown 2-bedroom they'd bought the year they got married, had both their names on the deed. He couldn't sell it. Not without her signature. Not without her knowing. He sold it.
Claire asked.
Closed last week. Everything's final. Naomi tilted her head. Don't tell me you didn't know. Julian said you signed off. Said you agreed to the divorce. Let him handle the property. Took your share and walked. You telling me you're having second thoughts? Claire's fingers tightened around her bag strap. She hadn't signed anything. No divorce papers. No property transfer. No settlement agreement. 4 months overseas, taking calls at 3 a.m, surviving on airport food, living out of a suitcase. And Julian had been here. With her. In their home. I want to come inside, Claire said. Naomi laughed. It was a light, genuine sound, which made it worse. Come inside? To see what? Our life together? Claire, come on. Don't do this to yourself. Just for a minute.
Why?
Naomi's tone sharpened, the mask slipping. The place has been redone. There's nothing of yours left. Julian said you were a practical person. Don't make this ugly. The hallway light clicked off. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Claire stood in it, feeling the full weight of 4 months, 11 countries, 47 contracts, and a marriage she hadn't known was already over. The elevator chimed downstairs. Footsteps. Dress shoes on tile. Julian rounded the corner in a charcoal overcoat, carrying 2 shopping bags from the organic market on Spring Street. He stopped when he saw her. His expression flickered. Not guilt, not surprise, but something closer to mild inconvenience. Like she was a package delivered to the wrong address. You're back. He said it flat. No panic. No explanation. Naomi drifted toward him, her hand finding his arm with practiced ease. She wanted to come inside. I told her the place was sold. Julian shifted the shopping bags to his other hand and pulled out his phone. A few swipes. Then, he turned the screen toward Claire. Transaction record. County Property Office. Sale closed last week. Both signatures on file. Claire looked at the screen. The document looked legitimate. County seal, notary stamp, date and time of recording. And at the bottom, in the signature block for the sellers, Julian Croft and Claire Morrison Croft. Her name. Her signature. Except she'd never signed it. I didn't agree to this, she said. You did. Julian pocketed the phone. The divorce agreement you signed before you left. Attachment C. Property disposition authorization. You probably didn't read the fine print, but my attorney confirmed everything with you. Your attorney never contacted me. Last month. You were changing planes in Frankfurt. My legal assistant called for verbal confirmation. You said, and I'm quoting, "Yes, that's fine. I agree. We have the recording." Claire's stomach dropped. She remembered the call. A woman's voice, professional and slightly rushed, explaining she was just confirming routine documentation and needed verbal authorization. Claire had been running on 2 hours of sleep, her connecting flight boarding in 40 minutes, her brain sludge-thick with jet lag and deadlines. She'd said yes without thinking. That wasn't routine documentation. That was a trap. You're remembering now, Julian said, reading her face. Look, I'm not trying to screw you over. We both knew this was coming. You checked out years ago. All I did was speed up the timeline. Naomi tugged gently at his sleeve. Come inside. It's cold. Julian pulled out his keys, slid one into the lock, and opened the door. Claire looked past him into the apartment. The layout was the same, but everything else had changed. The navy curtains she'd picked out were gone, replaced with beige blackout drapes. Her comfortable sectional had been swapped for a stiff, leather sofa. The wall where their wedding portrait had hung now displayed an abstract canvas in muted grays and cold blues. Naomi's taste. Naomi's choices. Naomi's home now. If you left anything here, Julian said, stepping inside, make a list. I'll have Naomi look for it. Most of your stuff's been donated or tossed. New owner didn't want the clutter.
Tossed.
Nothing valuable. Old clothes. Some books. You won't miss any of it. Naomi lingered in the doorway, twisting a strand of hair around her finger. She glanced at Julian, then back at Claire. Give us a minute, she said to him. Julian hesitated, then nodded and disappeared into the apartment with the groceries. The door stayed half open. Naomi stepped into the hallway, close enough that Claire caught her perfume, something expensive and deliberately subtle. Let me be clear, Naomi said, her voice dropping to something private and sharp. For 4 months, Julian has made me coffee every morning. He's warmed milk for me at night. Weekends, we go to galleries, concerts. He tells me I'm the one he should have chosen. He tells me marrying you was the biggest compromise of his life. She paused, letting the words land. He says you're good at logistics, paying bills, keeping schedules. But you never made him feel anything. He says in 5 years of marriage, he can count the times you were intimate on one hand. He says he stopped wanting you years ago. Claire's nails dug into her palm. She forced herself to breathe. So here's my advice, Naomi said, stepping back toward the door. Stop standing in a hallway that doesn't belong to you. You're not the lady of this house anymore. You're not even the previous owner. The place is sold. What exactly are you still doing here? The hallway light clicked off again. In the darkness, Claire heard the door close. The deadbolt slid into place. She stood there for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. 17 unread messages. All work. She swiped past them and called the only person she trusted to pick up at this hour. Daniel Okonkwo answered on the 3rd ring. Her attorney for 6 years, ever since she'd needed someone to review her employment contract at Morrison Consulting. Sharp, expensive, and discreet. Daniel, I need you to check something. A property in my name was sold. My signature was forged. A pause on the other end.
Claire.
When did you get back? Tonight. Then you don't know. He exhaled. Julian filed for divorce 2 weeks ago. Grounds, irreconcilable differences, extended separation, and refusal of marital relations. He also filed for an emergency asset freeze. Your personal accounts have been frozen pending review. He's claiming you've been moving joint assets offshore. Claire sank against the wall, her legs giving out. She slid down until she was sitting on the cold hallway floor, her back against a door she no longer had a key to.
I've been working, she said.
I generated $4 million in revenue for the firm in 4 months. And he's claiming I'm stealing from him.
I know, but the freeze is in place.
How much cash do you have access to right now? She checked her wallet. 3 credit cards. 1 debit card. $460. Not much. Then don't go home tonight. If Julian's already filed, he's been planning this for a while. Showing up could trigger something we're not ready for. Do you have somewhere safe? Claire looked at the door. Muffled laughter filtered through from inside. Julian's voice, low and relaxed. Naomi's, lighter, teasing. The kind of easy intimacy that had been missing from Claire's marriage for years. I'll find a hotel.
Good.
I'm pulling the full property transaction chain, the divorce filing, and Julian's company financials for the last 18 months. I'll also start background on Naomi Vance. Sit tight and don't engage.
Can you do that?
Claire stood up, her legs unsteady. Daniel, one more thing. What? She looked at her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone, a woman she barely recognized, eyes hollow, jaw set tight. I want to make sure that when this is over, Julian Croft doesn't get to walk away from what he did. Not clean, not whole, not with anything he thinks belongs to him. Silence on the line. I want to take every step he thinks he's already won, Claire said, and make sure he never takes another one. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful.
Claire.
Are you sure about this? She didn't answer. She ended the call and walked toward the elevator. Behind her, the laughter continued. Daniel's first batch of documents hit her inbox at 2 a.m. Claire sat at the desk in her hotel room. 3 room keys spread in front of her, 2 phones, a laptop, and a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. Outside the window, the city glittered with lights that never turned off. She opened the files. The property authorization had been dated the 17th of last month, the day she'd changed planes in Frankfurt. The signature was a near-perfect replica of her own. Same slant, same loop on the capital C, same way she crossed her T-S with that slight upward flick. But Daniel had already flagged the critical detail. The notary stamp was dated a week before the signature. Someone had pre-cleared the paperwork before the authorization even existed. Julian's divorce filing ran 17 pages. She read it twice. The language was clinical, calibrated to sound reasonable while painting her as cold, absent, emotionally neglectful. Asterisk, the parties have lived separate lives for over a year. The respondent has consistently prioritized professional obligations over the marriage. Attempts at reconciliation have been rejected. Asterisk. She'd been in 11 countries closing deals that kept Julian's lifestyle afloat while his second startup stumbled. She'd paid off his first failed venture with 2 years of 80-hour weeks. She'd funded his current company with her grandmother's inheritance. And this was how he repaid her, by telling a judge she wasn't present enough, wasn't warm enough, wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed. Daniel again. Asterisk, Naomi Vance. Married to Martin Vance, Singapore-based real estate developer. Divorced last year. Large settlement, reported at $3.5 million. Returned to the U.S. 3 weeks before she and Julian reconnected at a college alumni event. Timing is tight. Asterisk. Another buzz. Asterisk, Julian's company moved $2.3 million offshore 3 months ago. Listed as consulting fees. Recipient is a shell company registered in the Caymans. Tracing ownership now. Asterisk. Claire set down her phone and stared at the ceiling. $2.3 million. More than Julian's company had ever reported in annual profit. If that money came from joint assets, or worse, from the property sale, it meant Julian hadn't just been planning to leave her. He'd been planning to clean her out. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Asterisk, Claire, this is Naomi. Julian doesn't know I'm texting you. I just wanted to say, he's not trying to hurt you. He just finally chose what he really wanted. You two were never right for each other. You're successful, you're smart, you'll find someone else. Let this go. It's better for everyone, asterisk. Claire read the message 3 times. The audacity of it settled over her like ice water. Not trying to hurt you. Naomi had answered the door of Claire's home in a silk nightgown. She'd stood there and explained that Claire's husband had been making her coffee every morning for 4 months. She'd smiled while she said Julian had never wanted Claire. And now she was sending late-night texts about how Claire should let it go for her own good. Claire typed 1 word in response, noted. She wasn't going to fight Naomi over text. That was exactly what Naomi wanted. Engagement, drama, proof that Claire was the unhinged ex-wife Julian's legal filing described. Every message Claire sent could end up as an exhibit in court. She wouldn't give Naomi the satisfaction. Instead, she opened her laptop and started building a timeline. September, Naomi returns to the U.S. October, Julian starts coming home late. Client dinners. Networking events. His phone passcode changes. November, Julian suggests a trial separation. When Claire refuses, he drops it. But something shifts. He becomes polite in a way that feels like distance. December, Claire's firm offers her the international expansion role. Julian encourages her to take it. This is your moment, he says. Don't worry about things here. January, Claire leaves for the first leg of her overseas project. Julian video calls every night. February, the video calls become voice calls. March, the voice calls become text messages. April, the texts slow to every 3 days. Asterisk busy. We'll call soon. Don't worry. Asterisk. Last month, the 17th, a woman claiming to be a legal assistant calls Claire during her Frankfurt layover. Claire says yes to something she doesn't understand. Last week, the property sells. Her signature is forged. Her marriage is legally terminated without her knowledge. Tonight, she stands in a dark hallway while a stranger tells her she was never wanted. Every step had been calculated. Every move timed to her absence, her exhaustion, her trust. Julian hadn't stumbled into an affair. He'd executed a strategy. But Claire had something he didn't know about. She pulled up the folder Daniel had labeled medical records. Inside were the treatment summaries from 2 years of fertility procedures, 3 rounds of egg retrieval, dozens of hormone injections, countless ultrasounds and blood draws. And Julian, sitting beside her in every waiting room, holding her hand through every injection, driving her home after every procedure. The divorce filing claimed they'd been intimate fewer than 5 times in 5 years. The medical records proved otherwise. You couldn't do 3 rounds of assisted reproduction without a husband who was very much present, physically, emotionally, and legally. Julian had signed the consent forms. He'd provided samples. He'd told the doctors they were a team, that they were in this together, that he wanted a family with her. And now he was telling a judge he'd barely touched her in 5 years.
Perjury.
In a divorce proceeding, one provable lie was enough to collapse the other party's entire case. If Julian was willing to lie about this under oath, what else was he lying about? The property sale? The asset transfers? The affair? Claire closed the laptop and lay back on the bed. The ceiling was white. The room was silent. She felt something shift inside her. Not hope, exactly, but a colder, sharper version of it. The clarity that comes when you finally see the whole board. Julian thought he was playing chess. He'd been moving pieces for months, setting up his endgame, assuming Claire was too busy, too trusting, too oblivious to notice. But Claire hadn't built her career by being oblivious. She closed multi-million-dollar deals by reading the room, anticipating the counters, and never, ever, showing her cards until the moment was right. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. I need a forensic handwriting analyst. Tomorrow morning. And a private investigator. Someone who can dig into Naomi Vance's financials, her ex-husband, and every transaction she's made since she got back to the States. That's going to run. I don't care what it costs. I want everything. Bank records. Travel history. Any connection between Naomi and the offshore account Julian moved money to. Daniel was quiet for a moment. You think this goes deeper than an affair? I think Julian's not smart enough to pull this off alone. He's never been strategic. He's reactive, emotional. Someone's been guiding this. And Naomi Vance showed up at exactly the right moment with exactly the right pressure points. I'll make the calls. Get some sleep. Claire ended the call and turned off the lamp. In the darkness, she could still see the timeline burning behind her eyelids. September, October, November, December. Month by month, step by step, Julian had been led away from her. And she'd been led away from everything she owned. She thought about her mother, recovering from heart surgery in Phoenix. About her colleagues, who saw her as the woman who never lost. About her friends, who toasted her marriage 5 years ago and would now have to be told it was over. She couldn't call any of them. Not yet. Not until she had more than a story about being locked out of her own home. Tomorrow, she'd have the handwriting analysis. By the end of the week, Naomi's financials. And by the time Julian realized she wasn't going to quietly disappear, she'd have enough evidence to make his entire case collapse. The ceiling stayed white. The room stayed silent. Claire closed her eyes and let the anger settle into something useful. The handwriting analyst's office sat in a nondescript building in the financial district. Claire arrived at 10 in the morning with Daniel, who was already on his third coffee and looked like he hadn't slept. The county property office has an internal timestamp issue, Daniel said as they rode the elevator up. The authorization was logged in their system a full week before the signature date. Someone pre-filed the paperwork. That means Julian had inside help, someone at the county level who processed documents they knew were fraudulent. Claire filed that away. Another thread to pull. The analyst was a woman in her 50s named Dr. Helen Park. Silver-rimmed glasses and the kind of precise, unhurried manner that comes from decades of expert testimony. She spent 40 minutes examining the authorization document alongside samples of Claire's actual signature, old contracts, personal letters, a birthday card. The forgery is sophisticated, Dr. Park said, setting down her magnifier. The overall shape, the slant, the pressure patterns. Whoever did this studied your handwriting carefully. But there are tells. The cross on your T in Croft. You do it left to right with a slight upward curve. This version is straight. The loop on your capital C, yours has a hesitation point about 2/3 through, consistent across every sample you gave me. This version flows continuously. It's a forgery and I can prove it. My report will be ready by tomorrow afternoon. Claire nodded. If this goes to court, can their side bring in someone to dispute it? They can try. But the markers I've identified are definitive. Any qualified forensic examiner will reach the same conclusion. Whoever signed your name knew enough to make it look convincing to a layperson, but they weren't a professional forger. Dr. Park paused. Do you know who did it? Claire had a pretty good idea. Naomi had been a finance executive before she married Martin Vance. She'd handled contracts, processed paperwork, managed accounts. If anyone knew how to replicate a signature from a high-resolution scan, it was her. Outside the building, Daniel's phone rang. He stepped away to take it, and when he came back, his expression had shifted. My investigator pulled Naomi's property records, he said. She bought a condo in West Loop last month. Paid cash. $1.2 million. Where did the money come from? That's the interesting part. The funds hit her account 3 days before the purchase. $1.5 million. Transferred from a holding company registered in the British Virgin Islands. The same holding company that received Julian's $2.3 million consulting fee. Claire stood on the sidewalk, letting the pieces click into place. Julian had moved company money offshore. Some of it had come back, to Naomi. The rest was still missing. Julian's company isn't his alone, Claire said. He has a business partner. Marcus Chen. I've already reached out to Marcus's attorney. He's aware company funds have been moved without his knowledge. He's considering pressing charges. Embezzlement. Potentially. But it gets more complicated. If Julian moved the money under pressure from Naomi, if she orchestrated the transfer, then she's not just the other woman. She's a co-conspirator. And if she's done this before... Daniel didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They both knew what they were looking at now. A pattern. Naomi Vance hadn't just come back to reconnect with an old flame. She'd come back with a plan, and Julian Croft had walked right into it. Claire spent the afternoon at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, building out her evidence file. She worked like she was prepping for a client pitch, every document indexed, every timeline verified, every claim backed up by paper. When her phone buzzed with a new message from Daniel, she opened it immediately. Naomi's ex-husband, Martin Vance. His company collapsed 6 months before the divorce. SEC investigation. Accounting fraud. He paid Naomi a settlement of roughly $2 million. She signed an NDA and a non-cooperation agreement, meaning she agreed not to testify against him or share company records with investigators. Claire leaned back in her chair. $2 million to stay quiet about accounting fraud. Then Naomi comes back to the U.S., reconnects with Julian, and within months has moved another $2.3 million offshore. She wasn't just a woman having an affair. She was a professional. Julian was her latest mark. And Claire? Claire was collateral damage.
Her phone buzzed again. Julian.
We need to talk. I know you're back. Let's handle this like adults. Claire stared at the message. Handle this like adults. He'd sold her home, forged her signature, moved their money offshore, filed for divorce without telling her, and was now living with the woman he'd been cheating with. And he wanted to handle this like adults. She typed back. Agreed. Thursday, 2 p.m., the Drake Hotel. Tea service. Just us. Julian replied almost instantly. I'll be there. Claire set down her phone and looked out the window. The Drake was a classic choice. Public enough to be safe, private enough for a conversation no one else needed to hear. More importantly, the Drake was where they'd had their first anniversary dinner. Julian had held her hand across the table and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. She wanted to see if he could say that again with a straight face. She also wanted him to repeat, in his own words, everything he'd put in that divorce filing. Every lie about their marriage. Every claim about their intimacy. Every carefully worded accusation designed to make her look cold and absent and neglectful. Illinois was a two-party consent state, which meant she couldn't record their conversation without his knowledge. But she didn't need a recording. She just needed to hear him say it. To know, with absolute certainty, that the man she'd married was gone, and that the man who remained deserved everything that was coming. The Drake hadn't changed. Same crystal chandeliers. Same heavy drapes. Same pianist in the corner playing something soft and forgettable. Claire arrived early and chose a table near the window, where the afternoon light fell across the white tablecloth in clean, bright lines. She ordered tea she had no intention of drinking and waited. Julian walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. Navy suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone with that carefully casual look he'd perfected over years of client meetings. He looked good. Healthy. Like the last 4 months had been kind to him. He sat down across from her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. You look tired, he said. I've been traveling. I know. Daniel told my attorney you were overseas. He paused. I didn't plan for you to find out this way. Coming home to an empty house. That wasn't what I wanted. What did you want? Julian exhaled, stirring his tea. I wanted us to have a conversation. A real one. About how things had been between us for years. About the fact that we were both unhappy and neither of us wanted to say it. I thought if I gave us some space, you'd realize it too. So, you moved Naomi into our home while I was working overseas. I didn't move her in. She was there. We were together. It happened gradually. Gradually. Claire let the word hang there. You sold our apartment gradually. You forged my signature gradually. You filed for divorce while I was in Dubai, closing a deal that paid the mortgage on a home you'd already given to someone else. All very gradual. Julian's jaw tightened. I didn't forge anything. You signed the authorization. I was on a layover in Frankfurt. I'd been awake for 30 hours. A woman called and asked for verbal confirmation on routine paperwork. I said yes, without knowing what I was agreeing to. That's not signing. That's being ambushed. The law doesn't see it that way. Then let's talk about what the law does see. Claire set her teacup down. Your divorce filing says we've been intimate fewer than 5 times in 5 years. It says I refused marital relations. It paints me as a cold, absent wife who prioritized her career over her marriage. Julian's expression flickered. Those are legal filings, Claire. They're not personal. They're sworn statements. You sign them under penalty of perjury. So, I want to hear it from you directly. Is that what you're telling the court? That I refused you? That we barely had a marriage? Julian looked away. A muscle in his jaw worked. I'm telling the court that our marriage was broken. The details are just legal language. It's not about what's literally true. It's literally perjury if it's false. Then what do you want me to say? His voice rose, drawing a glance from a nearby table. That we had a great marriage? That you were present and warm and everything I needed? You were gone half the time, Claire. When you were home, you were working. I'd try to plan things, dinners, weekends away, and you'd cancel because something came up at the office. You think I didn't notice? You think it didn't matter? So this is my fault. I'm not saying that. You're saying I drove you to Naomi. That if I'd been a better wife, you wouldn't have had to sell our home and move your girlfriend in while I was overseas. That's what you're saying. Julian was quiet. His right eyelid twitched, a tell she'd learned years ago during late-night poker games with friends. He was lying.
Or about to.
Naomi made me feel something, he said finally. Something I hadn't felt in years. She looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't just another item on your to-do list. Claire felt the words hit, but she didn't flinch. So, when you went to the fertility clinic with me, 3 separate rounds, months of injections and procedures, that was just another item on my to-do list? You held my hand through every appointment. You drove me home after every surgery. You told the doctors we were trying to start a family. Was that all just what? Going through the motions? Julian's face went pale. Those treatments were different. That was about.
About what?
About us having a child together? About building a family? Claire leaned forward. You can't tell a judge we never had a marriage while also having 3 rounds of assisted reproduction on file. The clinic has records, Julian. Consent forms with your signature. Appointment logs with your name on them. The timeline alone destroys your entire narrative. That's not. Those treatments don't prove. They prove you lied. Under oath. And if you lied about that, what else did you lie about? The property sale? The asset transfers? The affair?
She paused.
Perjury is a felony, Julian. Even in family court. Julian's teacup rattled against its saucer. His hand was shaking. You're threatening me? I'm informing you. I know about the $2.3 million moved offshore. I know about the shell company in the Caymans. I know Naomi bought a condo with money that traces back to your company accounts. I know Martin Vance paid her $2 million to stay quiet about his accounting fraud. And I know she's been guiding this entire thing, the property sale, the divorce filing, the asset transfers since the day she got back to the States. Julian stared at her. The color had drained completely from his face. How do you know about Martin? I hired people. The same way you hired people to forge my signature and file false documents with the county. Claire stood, leaving her tea untouched. I wanted to hear it from you. The lies. The justifications. I wanted to know if there was anything left of the man I married. Claire. There isn't. She picked up her bag. Don't contact me again. Everything goes through our attorneys now. She walked out of the Drake without looking back. The pianist had shifted into something melancholy in a minor key. The afternoon light stretched long across the carpet. Outside, the city was loud and busy and indifferent. Claire stood on the sidewalk, letting the wind cut through her coat, and felt something that surprised her. Relief. She'd spent 8 years trying to make Julian happy. 8 years bending her life around his needs, his career, his moods. And in one conversation, she'd finally seen him clearly, not as her husband, not as the man she'd built her life around, but as a weak, selfish, easily manipulated fool who'd thrown away everything real for a woman who was using him. Naomi would chew him up and spit him out. That was what she did. Martin Vance was proof. Julian was just the next name on her list. And Claire? Claire was free. The court-ordered mediation was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Claire's legal team had spent the intervening days compiling everything: the handwriting analysis, the medical records, the financial documents from Martin Vance's SEC case, the bank transfers showing the money trail from Julian's company to Naomi's condo. Daniel had also filed a motion to lift the asset freeze, arguing that Julian's claims of financial misconduct were fabricated to cover his own embezzlement. The judge had agreed to review it at the mediation. Claire arrived at the courthouse with Daniel and a thick binder of exhibits. Julian was already there, seated beside a new attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s who radiated competence. His previous lawyer had withdrawn from the case 2 days earlier, citing irreconcilable differences with his client. Claire suspected the real reason was that Julian couldn't pay him anymore. Naomi wasn't present, but Julian's phone kept buzzing with messages, and every time he glanced at the screen, his expression tightened. The mediator was a retired family court judge named Patricia Holloway. Silver hair, no-nonsense manner, reputation for seeing through bullshit within the first 5 minutes. The purpose of today's session, Judge Holloway began, is to explore whether the parties can reach a settlement without proceeding to trial. I've reviewed the filings from both sides. I'll be frank, this is one of the more contentious cases I've seen in recent years. Mrs. Croft, your counsel has submitted evidence suggesting the divorce filing contains false statements. Mr. Croft, your original filing claims a marriage that was essentially over years ago. I'd like to hear from each of you. Julian's attorney spoke first. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that the marriage has broken down, but he maintains that the property sale and asset transfers were conducted legally and with Mrs. Croft's knowledge. Any suggestion of fraud or forgery is unfounded. Daniel slid the handwriting analysis across the table. We have a forensic report from Dr. Helen Park confirming that the signature on the property authorization is a forgery. We also have county records showing the authorization was pre-filed a week before the signature date. This was a coordinated fraud. Judge Holloway examined the report. Her expression didn't change, but she spent a long time on the final page. Mr. Croft, did you sign your wife's name on this document? Julian's jaw clenched.
No.
Did you arrange for someone else to sign it?
No.
Then how do you explain the forensic findings? Julian's attorney interjected. Your Honor, handwriting analysis is not an exact science. We intend to retain our own expert who will. Your client is under oath, Judge Holloway said. I'd like to hear from him. Julian's face was tight. I don't know how that signature got there. Maybe Claire signed it and forgot. She was traveling constantly. She barely knew what she was doing half the time. Claire didn't react. Daniel had warned her this might be his strategy. Gaslighting, confusion, making her seem unreliable. She let the silence sit. Judge Holloway turned to Claire. Mrs. Croft, your husband claims you may have signed the document and forgotten. What's your response? I've never forgotten signing a legal document in my life, Claire said. I run a division of a Fortune 500 company. My job involves reviewing and signing contracts worth millions of dollars every week. I don't forget signatures. But if the court needs additional evidence, I have it. She nodded to Daniel. Daniel opened the binder. We've subpoenaed phone records showing that a call was placed to Mrs. Croft from a number registered to Julian Croft's legal assistant on the date in question. The call lasted 4 minutes. During that call, the assistant requested verbal confirmation of routine documentation, while Mrs. Croft was between flights in Frankfurt. We have a recording of that call, obtained from the assistant's voicemail system, which we're prepared to enter into evidence. Julian's attorney's expression flickered. She hadn't known about the recording. Additionally, Daniel continued, we have bank records showing that the proceeds from the property sale, approximately $840,000, were transferred to an offshore account controlled by Mr. Croft and from there partially redirected to a real estate purchase made by Naomi Vance. Ms. Vance bought a condo in West Loop last month for $1.2 million cash. The funds can be traced directly to Mr. Croft's company accounts. Judge Holloway removed her glasses. Mr. Croft, are you aware that what you're describing, moving joint assets offshore and redirecting them to a third party without your spouse's knowledge, constitutes fraudulent conveyance and potential embezzlement? Julian's face had gone gray. I didn't, Naomi said. Your Honor, His attorney cut in sharply. My client needs a moment to confer with counsel. Take your moment, Judge Holloway said. But when we resume, I expect straight answers. Julian and his attorney huddled in the corner of the room. Claire could hear the attorney's voice, low and urgent, but couldn't make out the words. Julian's shoulders were hunched. He looked smaller than he had an hour ago. Smaller than he had at the Drake. Smaller than the man she'd married. When they returned to the table, Julian's attorney spoke. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made in the handling of the property sale. He's prepared to discuss a settlement that returns the disputed assets to Mrs. Croft and provides reasonable spousal support. Mistakes?
Daniel said.
Forgery isn't a mistake. It's a crime. We're not here to litigate criminal matters, Judge Holloway said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Mrs. Croft, what would you consider an acceptable resolution? Claire had thought about this moment for weeks. She'd imagined demanding everything, the full value of the property, punitive damages, an apology in open court. But sitting here now, watching Julian crumble under the weight of his own lies, she realized she didn't want a long, drawn-out battle. She wanted her life back. She wanted to be done. I want the full proceeds of the property sale returned to me, she said. I want the $2.3 million that was moved offshore returned to the company, or my share of it paid out as part of the settlement. I want the court to recognize that Julian committed fraud, both in the property sale and in his sworn statements about our marriage. And I want the divorce granted today on my terms, with no further proceedings. Julian looked up. The $2.3 million is gone. I don't have it. Where is it? He didn't answer. But Claire already knew. It was in Naomi's accounts. In the shell company in the Caymans. In the condo in West Loop, and the new car in the parking garage, and the first-class tickets to places Claire had never been invited. Then you'd better find a way to get it back, Claire said. Because if you don't, Marcus Chun is going to press charges for embezzlement, and you'll be looking at prison time. That's not a threat. That's math. The room went quiet. Judge Holloway looked at Julian. Is that true? Is your business partner considering criminal charges? Julian's silence was answer enough. Then I strongly suggest, Judge Holloway said, that you accept Mrs. Croft's terms. Whatever is happening between you and Ms. Vance, it has clearly exposed you to significant legal liability. A clean settlement here may be the only thing that keeps you out of a criminal courtroom. Julian's attorney whispered something in his ear. He nodded barely. We'll accept the terms, the attorney said, with the caveat that the $2.3 million may need to be addressed in a separate civil action. My client doesn't currently have access to those funds. Then he can sign a promissory note, Daniel said, secured against his remaining assets, including his share of the company. Another long pause. Another whispered conference. Agreed, Julian's attorney said. Judge Holloway made a note. I'll have the settlement agreement drafted this afternoon. Both parties will sign before leaving the building. The divorce will be effective immediately upon filing. Mrs. Croft, you'll receive the full proceeds of the property sale plus spousal support equivalent to 40% of Mr. Croft's income for a period of 3 years. The promissory note for the $2.3 million will accrue interest at the statutory rate until recovered. Are these terms acceptable? Yes, Claire said. Mr. Croft. Julian nodded without looking up. Then we're done here. Judge Holloway stood, gathered her papers, and paused at the door. Mr. Croft, a piece of advice. Whatever relationship you're in, I'd suggest you take a very close look at your partner's financial history. In my experience, people who help you defraud your spouse rarely turn out to be trustworthy themselves. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Julian sat motionless, staring at the table. His attorney was already packing up, her expression carefully neutral. Daniel was reviewing the settlement notes, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Claire stood up. Claire. Julian's voice was hoarse. I didn't know about any of it. The money. The fraud. Naomi told me. I don't care, Claire said. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You wanted Naomi to be the answer to everything you thought was wrong with your life. You wanted her so badly you were willing to burn down everything we built to have her. She picked up her bag. Now you have her. I hope she was worth it. She walked out of the mediation room. Daniel followed, but he had the good sense not to say anything. They rode the elevator in silence, walked through the courthouse lobby in silence, and stepped out into the afternoon sunlight in silence. On the courthouse steps, Claire finally stopped. The sky was a bright, hard blue. The wind had picked up, scattering dry leaves across the plaza. You did well in there, Daniel said. I know. The $2.3 million might take a while. If Naomi's moved it offshore, recovery could be complicated. I know that too. Daniel studied her. What are you going to do now? Claire looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Naomi Vance was sitting in her new condo, probably still thinking she'd won. Probably still thinking she'd gotten away with everything. Martin Vance's money, Julian's money, a clean escape from Singapore, a fresh start in Chicago. But Naomi didn't know about the files Claire had compiled. The ones that connected Naomi to Martin Vance's accounting fraud. The ones that showed the money trail from Singapore to Chicago to the Caymans. The ones Claire planned to send to the SEC, the FBI, and Interpol the moment the divorce was final. Naomi thought Julian was her mark. She didn't realize she'd stepped into Claire's crosshairs. I'm going to take a trip, Claire said. There's someone in Singapore I need to meet. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Martin Vance. He's been looking for Naomi since she disappeared with his money. I think he'll be very interested in what I have to say. 3 months later, Claire sat on the balcony of her new apartment, a cup of tea cooling beside her. The place was smaller than the house she'd shared with Julian, a 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood near the lake, but it was hers. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every color on the walls. She'd chosen all of it. The settlement had come through clean. The property proceeds sat in her account. Julian's spousal support payments had started on schedule. Marcus Chen had taken full control of the company, and Julian had been forced to sell his shares to cover the promissory note. He was working now, something in sales. She'd heard, a long fall from the executive suite he'd once occupied. And Naomi Vance was gone. The SEC investigation into Martin Vance's company had been reopened, triggered by the documents Claire provided. Singapore had issued an arrest warrant for Naomi on charges of obstruction and fraud. But by the time the warrant was issued, Naomi had already fled. She'd sold the West Loop condo, liquidated what she could, and disappeared. Interpol had flagged her passport in 6 countries. She wouldn't stay hidden forever. People like Naomi always made mistakes eventually. They got comfortable. They got careless. And when they did, someone would be waiting. Claire had met with Martin Vance twice. He was thinner than his photos suggested, hollowed out by the collapse of his company and the weight of the charges against him. But he was cooperating with investigators now, and his testimony, combined with the records Claire had preserved, would be enough to put Naomi away if she ever surfaced. She used me, Martin had said during their first meeting. The same way she used you. The same way she used Julian. She finds people who are vulnerable, and she takes everything they have. She didn't take everything from me, Claire had replied. She thought she did. But she made a mistake. What mistake? She underestimated how angry I'd be. Now, on her balcony, Claire opened a new email from Daniel. Attached was a forwarded message from an investigator in Zurich. Naomi had been spotted at a bank in the financial district 3 days ago, attempting to access a safety deposit box under a false name. The bank had flagged the transaction. Swiss authorities had been notified. Extradition proceedings were underway. Claire closed the email and looked out at the lake. The water was gray-blue in the afternoon light, dotted with sailboats. The skyline rose behind it, all steel and glass, shimmering faintly in the heat. She thought about the night she'd stood in the dark hallway outside her own home, listening to her husband and his mistress laugh behind a door she no longer had a key to. She thought about how small she'd felt, how worthless, how utterly, completely broken. And she thought about how wrong that feeling had been. She wasn't broken. She'd been bent to the point of almost shattering, but she hadn't broken. She'd straightened back up. She'd fought. And she'd won. Not just the money. Not just the settlement. She'd won something harder to quantify. The knowledge that she was stronger than the worst thing that had ever happened to her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard about Zurich. I'm sorry for everything. I should have trusted you instead of her.
I know that now.
I know I can't fix this. I just wanted you to know I understand what I lost. Julian *. Claire read the message twice. Then she deleted it and blocked the number. She wasn't interested in Julian's remorse. He'd made his choices. He'd chosen Naomi over her, lies over truth, fantasy over reality. Whatever he understood now, it had come too late. She picked up her tea and took a sip. It had gone cold, but she didn't mind. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere across the city, people were falling in love, breaking up, signing divorce papers, packing boxes, starting over. The world kept turning. Life kept happening. Claire had spent years living someone else's version of her life, Julian's version, where she was the absent wife, the cold partner, the woman who wasn't enough. She'd tried so hard to be what he wanted that she'd forgotten to ask what she wanted. Now she knew. She wanted peace. She wanted freedom. She wanted to wake up in a home that was hers alone and drink her coffee looking at a view she'd chosen for herself. And she wanted, one day, to see Naomi Vance in handcuffs on a courthouse step somewhere, finally facing the consequences of everything she'd done. That day was coming. The investigators in Zurich were closing in. The extradition paperwork was being processed. Martin Vance was ready to testify. But Claire wasn't going to spend her life waiting for it. She'd already given too much time to people who didn't deserve it.
Julian, Naomi.
The whole messy, painful chapter of her life that was now, finally, behind her. She stood, stretched, and went back inside. The apartment was quiet. The walls were decorated with art she'd picked out herself. The bookshelves held books she'd read and loved. The kitchen had a single coffee mug by the sink, hers. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't the life she'd imagined 5 years ago, when she'd stood in a white dress and promised forever to a man who would eventually sell her home and call her cold. But it was her life. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.